All right, everybody, welcome to a big This Week in Crypto to end February here, February 20th, 2025. Lots to uncover as we look at some of the bleeding that's been going on, which is very infamously quite prominent and heavy at the moment, if you will. Bitcoin dropped roughly 18% in the past week at the time of this stream. It was actually down over 20% at one point, getting down to the low 78Ks before a very mild rebound here to about 82K. Ethereum down to 2162 at the moment. XRP really dropping hard down to $2.11 and a 23% drop. You can see it's pretty universal here. Not one of those weeks where Bitcoin held up well and altcoins really dropped. This was pretty much just universal with random exceptions like UGold, but for the most part, Fast Token here up 0.5%, but for the most part, consider about 98% of all assets in the red over the past week. We can see that social volume for Bitcoin is up 21% in the past week. Not surprising there, because whether Bitcoin goes way up or way down, those are the kind of events that cause polarity, that cause conversations to really erupt. Crypto, as we know, is always quite volatile compared to, let's say, the S&P 500 and an index fund. But when it gets kind of to the extreme levels of volatility, whether it's going up way high or way low, that's when we tend to see these big conversations start to erupt. And that is generally good for crypto either way. We want to see the mainstream media talking about it more, especially if they begin to discuss, big headlines like, "Oh, Bitcoin's bull cycle is over. Bitcoin is done. Crypto traders are licking their wounds," and all the equity, stereotypically older traders out there are laughing and rolling their eyes and saying, "Oh, good, crypto traders finally got what's coming for them." These are the kinds of things that usually form bottoms, and there's a reason for it. When retail is in severe depression or panicking and selling off, especially when mainstream media is starting to catch on and you have big figureheads that have massive influences when they get on, CNBC or whatever, that's when we really start to see the doom and gloom set in. And that's going to be kind of the theme of our discussion today, is how much FUD is really circulating through crypto right now, and how much panic is in traders' minds, because that is where we typically see prices turn around in a hurry, and whales and sharks get the opportunity to then scoop up massive amounts of coins that are being dropped by retail traders who never expected us to see the 70Ks again for Bitcoin, and such low prices for so many other altcoins. So we're in a very obviously negative sentiment state at the moment across crypto forums, but the question is how much. And before we get into a few of those charts here, I want to welcome Maxim, who should be on the call at the moment, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes. Here.
Welcome, my friend. So, big bleeding week, kind of the third one in a row. If we go back to early February, where this really started to look concerning, huh?
Yeah, well, this week ended finally impacted enough. People started to talk increasingly bearish, which we did not see yet before. Every dump, which was followed even by not so big recovery, was immediately turning feeling sentiment to positive. Now we will see if recovery continues and we turn positive. Okay, next dump is coming, but there is a good chance that we might get finally a relief rally for some time. Enough people around bearish, And I remember myself in the morning when I saw it, it felt quite wow, it felt quite strong, and felt like it will continue. But then you reflect and say, okay, actually we moved far enough, and the decline in crypto is obviously very much correlated or related to what's going on the macroeconomic level. Yeah, especially U.S. stocks.
Absolutely.
And one thing to keep in mind is that crypto is easier to move, and we always try to repeat that quite often crypto is first one to move because it's easier to move. It's a kind of front-running stocks, and if we want to see, if we're about to see recovering stocks, it will first happen in crypto. It's much smaller market, still less regulated, and with no exposure to very big players who need to follow very strict specific rules and all those kind of things. In crypto, there are still much more, or many more participants who are ready to take risk, to move market in any direction, explore possibilities, liquidate long shorts and all the stuff. But they also, whenever they start to price in something new, it also will move much faster than stocks. Usually. So
Yeah.
if we believe, okay, it's enough for Trump decline, all this rates and decisions to introduce additional import to goods, 25% for Europe is considered. If we think, okay, now market price it in, because yesterday was also a few days there was a quite strong crash, and it's about at least to correct or maybe to turn around. Crypto will move first. We need to observe. Now it's the time to observe again. 1-2 days, we'll see if it keeps growing and people still thinking or projecting lower prices. Like now, Bitcoin need to revisit 70,000. You know what will happen next. First, it will go to 90, then maybe to 70.
Yeah, I think there's several indicators that we can look at today to see exactly where sentiment is starting to lean. Obviously, we're in bearish territory. That's not a shock. But the question is, are we notably more bearish now than we were, 1 to 2 weeks ago when prices were starting to slip? For the most part, the answer is yes. But are we at that extreme fear point where a turnaround is usually pretty imminent? And that's what we'll get into. And right before I jump into a few of those charts, I want to point out some of the big whale transactions going on around crypto besides Bitcoin. And I like to check this a lot, especially when crypto is dropping very rapidly, because it shows where whales are really starting to pay attention and likely doing some dip buying. And I'm seeing Chainlink here on the Polygon network specifically, but still Chainlink at number one with 3,200% more $100,000 plus whale transactions this week compared to the week prior. That's a massive jump. So there could be something going on with Chainlink, specifically through the Polygon network, that I'm not privy to at the moment. But for those interested in some altcoin dips, seeing stuff like Chainlink, Mantle, interesting to see Lido staked Ethereum, wrapped stake Ethereum to be specific, Quant, WorldCoin on Optimism. That's another fascinating one. Relatively new coin. Wrapped Bitcoin on Ethereum is going to be a very big deal. And then a few more stable coins from what I'm seeing. But this tells me that there's definitely some movement on the whale side that we should be paying attention to. Okay, so looking at sentiment now, which I think is the right thing to lead off with. I just put this article out last night, my time, and it's about being a successful contrarian trader using Santiment's tools. And I give 4 concrete examples of how our social tools can be used to identify when traders are leaning extremely bullish or extremely bearish. Obviously, we're in the bearish range, but the question is, are we, in the same spots we saw here or here or here earlier this month? And each of these times was generally a pretty good time to buy the dip, especially this perfect one here. So all this essentially is a measurement of positive sentiment across social media divided by negative sentiment. The higher the number, the more you'll see a big high gold bar here that's indicating where the crowd is quite positive. If it's really low, that means the crowd is actually spamming an equal amount or even in more negative comments than there are positive comments. And that can be a really good sign that we've seen enough FUD blood, if you will, and we're likely to begin bouncing. So if I click on this link, each of these categories links directly to the chart, so you can find the template quickly. And taking a live look at the last 3 months, go figure, we're in extreme FUD range. In fact, this is by far the lowest we've seen over the past 3 months. I would fathom it might be the lowest we've seen in the past year, and it is. So keep in mind, even with this being a partial day right now, this is a ratio. So it doesn't matter. This isn't a sum bar where we need the day to complete in order for it to be, a one-for-one fair comparison. This is the overall amount of positive comments right now divided by the amount of negative comments. So even though we're not even, we're only about halfway through the day, but this is still going to be fairly where we're at by the end of the day, unless there's like an extreme rally that causes a lot of positive sentiment now. But this is exactly the kind of FUD we're talking about, and I'm sure you would agree, Maxim. Over the past year, yesterday and today are the lowest ratios of positive commentary compared to negative.
Yeah. Finally, as I said, finally we get to this point. Yeah. There are less talks about Bitcoin 2050. Actually, there are not anymore. And there are only mentions of buying the dips. Even these, where I think when I reported this tweet from Trump, it was like 2 days ago. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Starting from yesterday, even buying the dips became not so prominent. Still there are talks. But projections, price expectations, they're now on the downside. So expectations now are now 75, 70, Ethereum 2000 or below. I don't know about Solana, probably around 100.
Right.
Yeah. That's typically ripe for a bounty. Yeah.
Yeah, and we can check some of the other top caps in a moment, but just to make it easy to see these other very negative moments over the past year, 1, 2, 3, 4, essentially all of them were good times to buy. And that doesn't mean this is a perfect science and you absolutely must buy right now. We're not here to give investment advice. That's never been what our videos are about. But we work with probabilities and using history to understand what the most likely scenario is. And if we're comparing this to the past 4 moments, which weren't even as notable as this current one, they all were met with bounces, sometimes pretty short term, and they might only last a couple of weeks. But while the crowd is this negative, you're buying in while there's a lot of pain and a lot of retail selling going on, and being a contrarian has usually paid off. So that's a pretty good sign, in my opinion, and I'm sure Maxim is seeing it the same way, that we're at least going to see some relief here in the very near future, unless for some reason, traders begin getting FOMO and want to buy the dip en masse. I just don't see that happening. Mostly across our timelines, we were discussing it internally last night. It's just absolute fear and panic, and people trying to get out of crypto and find a good enough price where they can stomach selling off their crypto because they don't believe we're going to be seeing any more late 2024 types of rallies right now. So before we look at the next sentiment indicator. As promised, we'll look at a few of the other top caps just for comparison. This would be Ethereum. You can see on February 21st, 22nd, that's, 20th, 21st, that is. That's when we saw the most negative, with about 5 negative comments for every 3 positive. That's massive, because social media in general skews bullish most of the time. So seeing that much more negativity compared to positivity is huge. And where are we now? Well, we're seeing about 5 negative comments for every 4 positive. That's still huge. So very negative on the Ethereum end. Going to XRP, very negative, not quite historic like Bitcoin and Ethereum right now, but still way down there. You can see times in which we were much more bullish. And then Solana, just so we can round off those top 4. Right down there too, yeah, pretty much in the same spot as XRP, where it's very bearish, even though there's been a few days over the past year we've seen a little more bearishness. So yeah, all of the top 4 assets, very negative right now. Let's look at the next example here. And that would be funding rates and total interest. So this is a very big one. What we see here is essentially when traders are leaning very bullish or very bearish, they tend to put their money where their mouth is. And you'll see a lot of futures and margins and leverage positions that are opening either long or short. And right now, surprisingly, Maxim, we're seeing people mostly longing, at least on Binance. I opened this earlier this morning, and it was a little bit of a shock to me because I thought that people would be shorting by now.
Well, Bitcoin, maybe we need to check something else. No, can you check Ethereum and Solana?
Yeah, good point. And I will say that the open interest, at least, has collapsed a lot. So a lot of long liquidations have clearly happened. We've gone from a peak of $33 billion or so in total open interest, and now we're at 22 billion. So we've literally lost a third of that open interest just in the past week, 6 days. Just absolute massive. Looking at Ethereum, yeah, it's pretty neutral right now on the funding rate. Same thing, big drop in total open interest, going from about 9 billion to 6 billion. XRP, not much shorting. There was actually more shorting on the dip earlier this week, and now it's mostly neutral. Open interest is down. Let's see, Solana. Yeah, Solana's neutral as well. Funding rate looks normal. Open interest is dropping, just like with the others. But not much shorting going on. We would hope to see, the funding rates really starting to skew red right now, but they're not yet. That might mean that we've already just seen many of the shorts be liquidated, and now we're kind of back to neutral, and people are afraid to move either direction. But from what I see, funding rates are not skewing short like they probably.
And if you select not Binance, but I don't know, like what do we have the Bybit?
We don't have Bybit. I think we have BitMEX. So we have DYDX and BitMEX, and only for Solana, it's only Binance and DYDX. So if we look at DYDX,
if you select, there is this metric, funds and rates aggregated by exchange. There is a excerpt from the top or from the bottom, yeah. And then you select exchange there. Yeah, can you select here? Okay, yeah. Yeah, Bybit. Yeah, maybe you can select here Bybit.
So on Bybit,
you hide the other metrics.
It's pretty neutral.
I'll
switch to Bitcoin. Bitcoin did have a moment where it was pretty short, but it's kind of neutralized in the last 8 to 16 hours. Okay. So nothing special really on the funding rate side, which is a bit of a disappointment. You would hope that in this extreme drop, we would be seeing a lot of people betting against crypto at this point and hoping prices continue to go down, because with markets going the opposite direction of the crowd's expectation, that would increase the probability of prices going up, but not happening yet. Another one to keep an eye on would be trending words here. And I reposted your post about this, Maxim, where you mentioned, let's see if I can get it open. You mentioned the fact that words like buy the dip were really trending hard. This is your post for everyone to see.
Yeah, you see the whole story there. Yeah. It's not just words, it's just complete the first Bitcoin, and then also buy Bitcoin at the market. Market, buy bull, BTC, Bitcoin. Yeah, it's really, and it was yesterday before, or was even day before yesterday, before the last dump.
So yeah, something like a day and a half ago.
Yeah, it could be. Sometimes it's exactly happens shortly before the last flash, and then to really get people scared, and then it goes back even above the level when the people were talking about. It happens.
Right. So in short, you don't want to see words like buy the dip spammed across your timelines, because this means traders are still optimistic. Instead, what you want to see is crypto is dead, rug pull, hack, selling, words that imply that the crowd has had enough pain, they're jumping out of crypto, they no longer believe in it, and this allows whales and sharks to really just pounce and drive up prices when the crowd is least suspecting it. So this was the opposite of what we saw, and it was a bit of a precursor to what we've seen over the past day and a half, which is more and more bleeding. So if we take a live look, go back to the article, I'm going to open up trending words straight from the article. And what do we see? So we still see the word dip. Keep in mind, this is the past 24 hours, so there's a bit of lag to it. We see the word 80K, which I definitely am going to look at for the last part of the article, so we can see how people are spamming numbers. Still see the word buy here. Trump has always kind of fluctuated in and out of the top 10. The SEC and tariffs, interestingly. I'm curious, if we open up tariffs, see how much the sensitivity toward tariffs is correlating with the price dips right now. And it is a bit, especially since the talks really began to get loud at the beginning of this week. So on February 24th, as prices were declining, I guarantee that traders were kind of trying to attribute part of the reason that we're seeing a dump right now. And clearly part of the narrative right now is the tariffs going on here in the US where I am. And the conversation really hasn't stopped. So whether or not you believe that tariffs are directly impacting crypto, what matters is that crypto traders believe it. And if you are following this trend of sensitivity toward a topic that most people are seeing as bearish right now, you can probably capitalize on the FUD going on around tariffs. So, for example, if the talks about tariffs begin to die down, you might start to see prices rise. And if you suddenly see them rise and then have like a slight downturn, and then tariffs begin to erupt in discussion again, that's a precursor to a further downturn. There could be a point where it becomes a counter indicator, but right now, treat this kind of the same way you would treat, like the Ukraine-Russia war from 3 years ago. Anytime that started spamming, prices went down. Anytime Gary Gensler began trending, prices tended to go down. Anytime COVID from 5 years ago started to get tons of discussions, especially after the first few initial months of shock were kind of baked in, that's when you saw that further spikes of that subject led to prices going down. So really interesting to see there. And then as promised, why don't we take a look at the price differences, because it's really interesting what's going on. I looked at a short-term chart. If we just go to the past 24 hours, and we're going to make this super granular every 30 minutes, and I'm going to switch this to 70 to 75K. So prices below where we are now. I'll have this done in about 10 seconds. So I've switched the blue to 70 to 75K, and the red is going to be switched to just a bit above where we currently sit, which is 90 to 95K, or yeah, 90 to 95K. And this one, hit enter. And what do we see here? Well, the red is indicative of lots of discussion about 90 to 95K. If you see the bubble on the top right of this chart, it's showing that prices were sitting around 85, 86K, 84, 83. So all the discussion about 90 to 95K was related to traders predicting that we would still see those prices again, or maybe that was their target selling prices. And when people are targeting sell prices that aren't here yet, that's usually a sign that they're a little bit euphoric or greedy or still optimistic about the markets. Conversely, when we see a lot of discussions about 70 to 75K, which we haven't seen since Trump was elected back in early November, 3.5 months ago, that means that people are getting overly fearful. And guess what? We saw the most prominent mentions of 70 to 75K roughly 7 to 8 hours ago, right when we bottomed, right at about 78.4K or so. That's when all the 70 to 75K discussions jumped in, and that's when we started to bounce. Now, this is very short term. You know, we could back it up a little to a week, but it'll be a little skewed because we were still in the 90Ks back here. So it's a little irrelevant to look at prices when that literally is what the market price is. But you can already see right around here when we were dropping below, you know, this is where it became very relevant. And now people are talking about 70 to 75K a lot more. And I think that's a good sign that we're getting close to bottom territory when everyone is starting to spam those lower and lower prices from where we currently are. It's a sign that they're predicting doom and gloom right now. Anything you wanted to add to this or follow up or change on the chart?
Just a question. You excluded 80K from both of bearish and bullish setup, right? I don't see 80K.
I don't have to. I can add it right now just to see. The reason I don't include like our current prices is because it, you know, we're obviously, since we're in the 80 to 85K territory, people are going to be talking about it a lot just because that's what the level is. But we can still see. I like to look at, you know, 10% above and 10% below where we are because it shows predictions from traders rather than just mentions of current prices. But it's still relevant. I mean, we see a big spike right here when we were threatening to go below it, and then we did go below it. I'm trying to see if there's alpha right here. So prices were, yeah, I mean, a little bit. Prices were about to go below 85K. And that's where we started to see a big jump in 80 to 85K mentions. But yeah, it looks like the big alpha, in my opinion, Maxim, is when the 70 to 75K mentions are spiking in terms of Bitcoin's price. So
yeah.
But yeah, I like this chart a lot. I think it's really helpful, and you can do this for whatever the current price is. Yeah.
You could even include, I think I at least saw somewhere mentions of 65Ks.
Interesting. So let's look at that. Maybe I'll replace the 80s for a moment. And let's look at when people are getting really extreme and predicting that we're going to see another 25% drop from here. Yeah. Well, I'll recreate it really quick. So we're looking at buy or buying or bought, and then we're looking at Bitcoin or BTC or crypto or cryptocurrency or altcoins. That should be good enough. And we'll make this one sell, selling, or sold. Same thing. So in blue is the buys. I'll make this a little more zoomed out this time. And we'll go 8-hour candles. That should be perfect. So blue are the buy mentions, red are the sell mentions. We're definitely seeing big sell spikes at the moment here as well. Typically when the sells are higher than buying, which they might, yeah, they're skewed because there's always going to be more buy mentions. So I'm going to turn off shared axis. So we're just putting them both on their own axis to see the highs and lows. But when it's turned off, you can see clearly moments where sell is overlapping buy. And these tend to be when we see bounces. We saw temporary ones here, as well as here. But for the most part, we're seeing plenty of times where buy is overlapping sell, and that's when prices tend to continue to move down. So I think between the two, I like the price ranges as a better indicator for the short term right now. But there will be moments where you'll see right now lots of sell mentions compared to buy, and that's a good sign because it means the crowd is throwing in the towel. They're beginning to show signs of having enough, giving up on crypto, believing it things are scams, and that tends to be where prices begin to turn around. So, I mean, just based on those charts, Maxim, it does look like there are some signs that we are at least due for a relief rally. It might only last, 12 to 24 hours, but the signs are there.
Yeah.
Now, as we always do, I can also show how whales and sharks are looking at the moment. And if I open up my keys template,
Actually, I'm curious to if retail came back to Bitcoin or not.
Yeah. So we are seeing in the past 24 hours, they did begin to finally show some signs of accumulating. But I posted on social media a couple days ago about this drop between the 19th and 26th, 7-day span. They dumped about 7,000 Bitcoin, which isn't a ton. But considering we've pretty much only seen them move up or be flat for the past 6 months, this was different. This was a bit of a surprise, and prices did move down immediately as they started to dump. They dropped about 13-14% during the time that they dumped that 7,000 Bitcoin bag collectively. And over the past 24 hours, at least, they added about a little over 10% of that back, 755 Bitcoin. So long story short, there is a bit of accumulating by whales and sharks, but we need to see this continue for a few more days. Overall, the past 6 months is still showing an overwhelming pattern of accumulation. So if you are starting to feel some doubt, remember that the key stakeholders are still, for the most part, hanging tight and just letting this volatility play out. And if we look at the small traders, Maxim, we can just maybe go 0 to 0.01 BTC. Let's do it by absolute instead of percentage. Okay. We got rid of. We don't need both. So yeah, it does look like the retail crowd has been dumping for about 2 months, a little over 2 months now. They were holding 48,580 BTC, and now they're down to 48,039. They've dumped about 1.1% of their holdings over the past a little over 2 months. So that's a good sign. And obviously the 10 plus BTC holders have benefited from them and are accumulating. The other thing we can add to this chart without getting it too busy is the total amount of holders. So this would look at just the overall amount of non-empty wallets. And it's been pretty flat. Let's hide this to make things a little less noisy. So the total amount of holders was moving up a little bit between the 17th and 25th, but now it's kind of dropping again, 67.5K less wallets that had coins in them that now no longer have coins in them. It's kind of just been a roller coaster here. And compare that to the bull rally. If I zoom this out to the past year, you see how they're constantly moving up, moving up. Obviously, some downturn here as prices got really dicey over last summer. And then they just went on a roll between July 21st and February 25th. Almost a million new wallets overall on the Bitcoin network emerged with coins in them. So, yeah, since maybe late November, a few weeks after Trump was elected, things started to really flatten out and the growth has kind of stopped. So we went from here, maybe even like call it right there, and then all of a sudden we've seen a bit of a different trend going on. I'm curious, Maxim, what do you make of the fact that the growth from the overall network has slowed down to the extent that it has?
Growth of what?
Just the overall
total
growth
amount of wallets?
Exactly.
Well, when it's stagnant or ideally going down, it's generally not bad. It's good. Depends on context, or let's say at what phase of the market we're in. Now let's think. Let's for a moment. We've been around the top, and then the amount of wallets keep decreasing.
Yeah, so the decline happened right
sometimes-
after the all-time high.
Yeah. An open question, what is more valuable? Is it more valuable to look at this metric alone or more detailed how the behavior of smaller and bigger wallets? And I mean by amount of wallets. Yeah. So maybe if we see the difference between their behavior, it will be more telling. There will be more stories behind. I don't know. I'm just thinking about loud. I didn't check myself, but we can check exactly. Maybe combine exactly even more. I mean, up to 0. Next group is okay too.
Okay, so 0 all the way to 0.1.
Yes. Okay. It kind of takes them.
So they're fairly flat over the past few months. And if we compare that to 10 or more, let's say. Yeah, it's interesting. They really started to drop, right? This was when Trump was elected, this day, November 5th. And they dropped immediately and then finally began to rise about 3 weeks afterwards.
Kind of, they expected something will happen. Tell the news.
Right. Even here, this was right before Trump got inaugurated. So the two times that they really dropped were the times that Trump was either elected or inaugurated.
Yeah, but since then, actually, it's indeed a very good story. You see here the difference after Trump inaugurated. Looks like they accumulating slowly. Well, someone has to buy the dips. So this is the ones this Wales addresses. Truth has to be told, because we included so big range of wallets starting from 10 bitcoins. It means also exchanges and all ETFs are included too.
Yep.
Yeah. So it's if we would have excluded exchanges, it would be more clean view. Otherwise, amount of Bitcoin exchanges means that people deposit there to sell. So it's a little bit distorted, but generally keeps trend. Yeah.
Yeah, and if we look at supply and exchanges, because that's a good point, I've got this chart as well, and this shows how the supply of Bitcoin has been fluctuating on and off exchanges, and we can see since February 5th a rare increase. Yeah, we don't see it very often because it's usually just moving down and down. But yeah,
usually
about 2%.
Usually the story is that we're running out of supply. No one is selling. This is the usual story in media. Now it has changed.
Right. So clearly, I mean, as prices went down, you can see that the supply on exchanges was moving up. So people were clearly moving their coins to exchanges. And that's not a great sign because this, of course, is impacted by whales and sharks who were probably impacting this line significantly. And when you started to see that the prices were moving down right here, and then suddenly the supply and exchanges is moving up, that means we're probably not done. And there's going to be more decline coming in the near future. And that's exactly what happened. And then for the record, the top 10 exchange wallets, they're even declining a little bit in terms of stablecoin supply right now. And then the top 10 USD coin exchange wallets are really going up and down at the moment. I'm not quite sure what we can make of that other than the fact that dry powder is kind of going into hibernation a little bit, not very much, because we're still up significantly since Trump was elected right there precisely. So lots of Tether was either printed or moved to exchanges, and now it's starting to decline for the first time in a long time.
I don't know the story here behind here.
Yeah, just interesting to see. Looking at a few on-chain metrics, as we always do. Yeah, we're seeing a pretty big spike in transaction volume. It's a little smaller. Mini spike, nothing too significant there. Daily active addresses, however, we do see that yesterday was the biggest day since December 19th, a little over 2 months since we last saw something this big. So clearly a lot of addresses are interacting with this volatility, and coins are moving a little quicker than we've seen in quite a while. That's a good sign. It's an indication that we're polarized.
Yep.
30-day MVRV. So this is very important. The average wallets that have been active in the past 30 days are currently down about 10.2%. That's a good sign. If we start to see anything below, let's say 15, right about there, which we did briefly just about 8 to 12 hours ago, that's a sign that we're in a big opportunity zone. If we see anything above 15%, right about there, that's a sign that we're in a danger zone. And we actually haven't seen any danger zone for the past 3 months or so. The 365-day MVRV, for the first time in a long time, got to back out to a year, we're finally seeing a negative long-term MVRV. Last time we saw that was, I guess, very briefly on October 10th, which was literally right before the bull rally started. Or we go back to the big crash on August 4th, 5th. So this is significant because both MVRVs are in negative range. Technically, I guess the 365-day just squeaked back positive. It's at like plus 1%. But for the most part, you can consider this a very good sign that we're finally seeing evidence of the average wallets bleeding enough where we are in an opportunity zone.
Yeah, most of wallets, yeah.
Yeah. So this is significant and shows that, at the very least, if you bought in right now, you'd be doing so with a lot less risk compared to the past 3 months or so. Pretty much the lowest risk mathematically that we've seen since Trump was elected back in early November. I'm looking at a few other assets because I think this is important. MVRV right now. So Ethereum very much in the negative range. It's in the danger zone, below negative 15% right now, and long term is at negative 29%. So obviously Ethereum's been well documented as an underperformer over the past year to year and a half or so. And it's showing in the numbers here with average traders really bleeding heavily. Looking at a few more XRP.
Oh, you know what, Brian? I have an idea for our next stream. I will be in Malaysia, which is even one. Oh no, I still will be here. Okay, good. Probably I'll participate if we can keep at the same time. We need to look into some meme coins. Let's visit next time. Doge,
Sure.
Shiba. We'll pick up a few more, like really old coins. If you've seen pennies there, yeah, because majority of holders there, small hodlers. And if they get to the stage thinking, okay, I need to save whatever money I have left, wow, this will be very solid bottom ticket. But we will visit next time. For me, it's always so late. Difficult for me not to focus already.
Yeah, no problem.
We should, we'll check next time some meme coins. It will be interesting.
It's a good idea. I'm just briefly, right before we close off this call, since it's getting late for Maxim, I do see that Doge
you can
is,
continue. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'm just checking right now, and it's clear that Dogecoin sentiment is very low. Not shocking at all. Shiba Inu should be pretty similar. Similar, excuse me.
More volatile.
Yeah, actually not as bad, even though the price has been just as hammered as Dogecoin, down about 58% since early December. But yeah, meme coins, as you would expect, are getting crushed at the moment. And you can even look at, in terms of social dominance.
Mm-hmm.
So the pink line is the top 6 meme coins, and they're being discussed far, far less than layer 2s and layer 1s right now. Make sure this is on Bitcoin. Oh yeah, that changes a lot. So look at how much Bitcoin's being talked about and just the top layer 1s versus the top meme coins just being ignored relative to what we were seeing earlier in the beginning of 2025. Yeah.
Good. So market has to cool down. Yeah.
Right. This is generally a good sign that the greed is finally evaporating a little bit and opening up the opportunity for more organic growth in crypto. Yeah, I mean, I've pretty much hit my topics anyways, Maxim. So why don't we close out? Do you have any final words about this next week? You know, things that you think we should look for?
Things we should look for. Well, I can say what I would be personally looking for. It's a new toy, or let's say new tool we have now with Sanitizer, and I'm checking predictions from some top KOL accounts. And they haven't flipped yet to bearish statements. They just got quiet, which by itself already good. But I will be looking if any of them will come out with bearish statement, or at least some cautious statements that, oh, we need to wait and see and all the things. So this is what I will be looking for. And rest assured, if I see something, I will, at least one time, I will publish something. Because it's very interesting information. It's worked pretty well now on the way down. This I will look. And we were checking internally in team. You saw amount of debt in DeFi. It did increase or it did decrease because people repaid, and it could be enough reason for rebound. But we didn't see a lot of liquidations yet. Yeah, ideally, would like to see a further decrease of debt. Yeah, typically the internal reason for bear market is to remove bad debt. Yeah. And we still have quite some. And I believe we still have quite some people believing that we will get new all-time highs and everything. This hope has to be removed. And it will be visible either through additional repayments for all debt positions. And those who listen to stream, we have this chart layouts, and then hopefully we can share the chart layouts once it's published. And these two things is enough. Yeah, and of course, if there is any strong narrative explaining why we're down, specifically for crypto, it's good. Otherwise, it's also okay if it's just as a part of macro market conditions. But as we're talking about what we'll observe, and we're observing something in the hope to spot solid bottom, yeah. And for solid bottom, it ideally very strong consensus, reasoning, narrative. Why is it so bad? So people, majority will believe, okay, it will keep going down or will be dragged down for a long time. Number one. And then second, KOLs coming out and saying bearish statements. Okay, it's number two. And number three, debt increase or decreased even more. So the even more repayments back to our compound to some degree of Frax protocols. Yeah, so it will be good.
Look at this one, by the way, Maxim. This subject, BTC is dead, has popped up on Alpha Narratives.
Oh. Okay,
and there's big jumps here on the 22nd and 23rd a little bit. It's fairly small right now, but this is a good one to watch as a good bottom signal. If you see BTC is dead starting to pick up, great sign. Right now I'm seeing a Kanye West launch, also seeing a big rise right now. I wonder if Kanye planned to launch a coin during this time of all times. I don't know how well that's going to go while people are so...
Good timing here. And buy the dip, how strong is buy the dip narrative?
Buy the dip, where is
it's last one?
Very last one, yeah. It's small right now. Okay. That's a good sign.
Yeah, indeed.
But yeah, this is a great tool as well that you guys should monitor over the next few days. You just find it by going to social trends and clicking alpha narratives right here. And you can also put in your own custom subjects if you'd like to do some exploring there as well. But yeah, that's about it, Maxim. Thank you so much for joining during your late hour over there. And I'm looking forward to doing this again with you and seeing how things play out next week.
Yes, Brian. Thanks for preparing everything. Yeah.
Of course, my friend. All right. On behalf of on behalf of Santiment, thank you all for joining, watching either live or on replay. And we will talk to you next week. Trade safe.
Yep. Trade safe. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.